The Penguin, issue 3, Tom King writing with Raphael De La Torre, sorry, on the art. So this, we had the first issue where Penguin loses his ship and gets recruited to work for Agent Lady to go back into Gotham. Issue 2 was him forcing the Help to become one of his employees once again by murdering all of his staff. So issue 3 is him building a team. It's his goons, as it were, and it kind of references what's going on in Batman right now by saying, yeah, all my old goons are all unloyal. They're all involved in something else. So,
and I'll deal with them later. That threat is terrifying.
Oh, dear. So he gives a list to Agent Lady of people that he wants. And then the issue is mostly him, one by one, going to meet these different people. And they're all from a team called the Force of July. Now, I'm assuming this is some obscure thing Tom King's pulling out of DC Annals.
100%, and you'll get to them soon because I looked them up and they first debuted in the pages of Batman and the Outsiders.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Oh, awesome.
And
okay.
so they are a patriotic team that were given a power set by this shadowy government organization in the 80s. They're called the ASA. It's like the American Security Administration or something. And yeah, so they're all these kind of patriotic things, which if you don't know their powers, it gets a little bit murky trying to figure out who's who. But I do think after doing some research, Tom King did a really good job with their introductions. And if you're paying attention, you can really pick apart what these guys are about.
I think the first one is the most confusing because his dialogue and narration. Because you know, this follows the trend that this book's had, where the narration's always someone else in the scene. It's never Penguin.
Yep.
So for all these scenes where we meet all these characters, it's all their narration and their individual scenes. So this guy's really confused. He keeps saying, "Is that me or is this me?" And we'll talk specific because it lists their powers later, so we'll just talk about it then. But it becomes more clear when you get to that point why he's so confused. But yeah, so Penguin shows up and says, "You are mine." Like, I'm not you, but you're mine. So that one's really simple. And then we like completely change color palettes because that's all sort of blue and, you know, whites and nighttime and kind of, I don't know if it's Gotham, but it looks kind of Gotham-y.
Oh, they're Metropolis. Remember?
Metropolis, there you go.
Yeah, so
that's right. That's right. Yeah,
because he can't go into Gotham yet.
That's right, because they say in the first scene how much it's the Agent Lady saying how much she hates Metropolis because you have to just hope that Superman's busy with stuff to not notice you. But then he goes to like the guy in the boxing ring who you know, was the guy who had super strength and kind of has the Help kind of fight him to prove that he's not as good as he once was. But off it says, you know, you've got some lessons to learn, and kind of recruits him. And then things get really interesting because he goes to this woman who clearly her whole gimmick was flowers and plants, and like she's clearly kind of lost that a little bit. But Penguin's pitch is basically like, "Hey, I know Poison Ivy. I can get you to meet Poison Ivy. Wouldn't you like that?" And she's like, "Yes." And the little reveal here is really nice, where her narration is pretty simple as like this entire scene. She's just basically saying, "My garden is beautiful. It's luxurious. It's subtle. It's content. It's still." It's all these like positive words to describe how great her garden is. And then when you get the reveal when she goes outside, it's all dead. It's all just rotted. Nothing.
Yeah, it's like, it's just grass. It's barren. Like there's no garden. So clearly she's, you know, looking to tie back her powers, maybe, right?
Poison Ivy could bring some life into this. This yard, shall we say? And then we get the drunk, this woman at a bar who just wants to keep drinking, who's cynical. And I actually this one really made me laugh because ultimately, because, you know, Penguin's basically offering them all something that they need, right? And at the end of this scene, he's basically just trying to talk to her, and eventually she just turns and says, "I want money. Have you got lots of money, Cobblepot?" And he's like, "Yeah, I do." And okay, that's it. All right, that was easy. That one was really simple.
She was Lady Liberty of it, right?
Yeah. Well, we'll get to who they all are because there's the list towards the end. But the final one is this guy who comes home, and Penguin's got his sister tied up. The Help's pointing a gun at her head, and Penguin explains that he was the tough one because he's the only one who doesn't really need anything so he's got nothing to offer him because he's content. He's living a normal life. He's got a job that he likes. He pays his rent. He's pretty content with life. So it's like, well, I have to create something that you need. So now I'm the only one who can save your sister's life. So definitely plays into how much of a bastard and how evil Penguin is. I enjoyed this. Like, I think I enjoyed all these scenes that was introducing these characters. I think I enjoyed each one more than the last because as we were going, they felt like they were getting more and more interesting and more specific as we went. So obviously this guy agrees because he doesn't want his sister to be killed. Yeah. And Penguin just smiles an evil smile and says, "Let's get it started." And then we get this great page, which is like a security camera that's watching as they're all coming in and sitting down one by one, this team. And this is where you get all their names and what their powers are. So you've got Lady Liberty, who was the drunk. She fired psychic energy through her Liberty Torch. Right. So, okay. Then the boxer was Major Victory, who had super strength and flight. Sounds kind of Superman-y, really.
A little bit like kind of Captain America E2, right? You're adding to that, yeah. And
then we have the guy who was forced into this with his sister at gunpoint as Sparkler, who projected light beams from his fingers.
Basically the Dazzler, if you're familiar with Marvel Comics.
Yeah, and then you had the garden lady was Mayflower, who could make plants and then manipulate them, kind of Poison Ivy-esque, effectively. And then we have the guy who was first introduced as Silent Majority, who was someone who could duplicate himself, and only one survived, and like no one knows if that's the original one. So all of a sudden you think back to his scene and all of that stuff he was saying is, am I me? Are you me? It's like, this is some broken fragment of a man who was part of a larger whole, and the rest of it's all gone now. And I'm like, suddenly he's the most interesting one. Like, I'm the most excited by him now.
For sure. And that's also to bring another Marvel Comics character in. You have Multiple Man, Jimmy Madrox, right? Which during Peter David's X Factor, which I'm a big fan of that book, the X Factor Investigations era, he did this whole arc where Jamie, in order to learn as much as he could, send his duplicates out, because when he absorbs them back, he also absorbs the knowledge that they came across. So he sent a bunch of them out to the world to experience things, and he gets to one and he can't absorb him back because he's developed a life, right? And then stuff happens that he ends up absorbing, and he gets all of his memories, and it's super, super sad. And it's like, well, so what if one of those, let's say Madrox had died and that had left him nowhere else to go? That's what you get with the Silent Majority. It's a very, very interesting concept for a superhero book.
Yeah, plus there's a Flash villain who's kind of got that power as well, right?
That's Multiplex.
Multiplex, yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking of. So this is almost like a Saw movie, this last little part. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but he's got the five of them there, and like Penguin's talking over the comms. He's like, "You want to play a game?" Like, no, but he basically says to prove their loyalty, they've all got guns under their chairs, and that their mission here is just to shoot whoever walks in the door. So they all pick up their gun, they look at this door, and they're debating, like, they're debating how they feel about it, and like, oh, this is like the old days where we used to laugh, and the Sparkler dude, he's like, I didn't laugh, I didn't like this, like we were supposed to be the good guys, and then the other ones are quite cynical and say, we were never the good guys. So yeah, it's them sitting there with the guns, and then the final page is them all standing up and pointing the gun. We don't know who's walked through the door. We have no idea who Penguin's told them to kill. So that's something to look forward to in issue 3. I think I appreciate this was very different from the first two issues. Again, each issue's felt very distinct in its format, whilst keeping that centralized idea of it's always someone else's narration in the scene. It's never Penguin. But this had to introduce 5 characters, and I think it did a pretty compelling job of doing that by the end, and then left us on this cliffhanger. So I think overall as an issue, it's really strong again. Yeah.
I like the part when it's a Sparkler and he's gone above and beyond. Everyone else is kind of like a sad sack, right? Mayflower wants to meet Pam so she can get her, powers back under control. You have Major Victory, who's kind of like past his prime, living in the past still. Yeah.
There's he's not as obviously goofy, but there's a little bit of Peacemaker, I think, in there.
Yeah. And then you have, of course, Silent Majority. We went through that, and then Lady Liberty, who just, she gives the poem that's on the Statue of Liberty, but it's all very sarcastic, and there's just dripping with irony. And she's like, yeah, I don't care, I need money. But then you get to Sparkler, and he's become a teacher, and a lot of his the narrative boxes are about the stuff that they're going to do in class. Right. And then they introduce the idea that, Cobblepot tells him, he's like, yeah, but there's nothing that I could use against you. Right. There's nothing that you want from me. So I had to go and take something from you so you could want it back.
Yeah, that's why he's because everyone else's narration is basically feeding into what they're missing in their life. Whereas he's just thinking about what he's going to do in class with his kids because he likes it. He finds it fulfilling. Right. So that's all he's thinking about.
And the fact that Oswald took his sister and basically forces him to do this for her life and stuff, it really just drives into the ruthlessness that it's almost as if they reawaken the monster that is Penguin, right? Mm-hmm. He was out living his life, retired, and then they pulled him back in, and he has to remind everybody who he is. It's very monstrous, and King is very good at showing that balance because, like, again, all the narration is from other people. We never know what the Penguin's actually thinking, you know? So it's all very good. And then adding this obscure team that, of course, I could do research on. Always a fan of that, right?
It's fun learning about weird characters and teams like this. Now, a very intriguing issue, I thought. The book's been really good so far. Good stuff. The art, which we've not really mentioned too much, is very, very good. It's got that moodiness to it. It feels kind of like we're in a bleak world, which kind of fits, the Penguin's dark underbelly of society kind of thing. I think that stuff's really good. All these characters are very flawed in some way. Either they're depressed, they've got a fragmented mind, or they're a drunk, or they're whatever. But they all have these kind of darkness to their stories. Except Sparkler, who also has a dark scene, but it's not because of his life, it's because of what Penguin does to it. Yeah. He's invaded it. So, all very good. The expressions in the faces are really good. Particularly Penguin, who, when he's getting his way and he's like giving that creepy smile, is very, very effective. So. Yep.
Very much so.
Yeah. So, what are you rating Penguin issue 3?
I'm giving this an 8.5.
Yeah, I agree with that. 8.5 is exactly what I had in my mind. I think, issues 2 and 3 have been great, but neither one has been as almost perfect as issue 1 was, which was like this astonishing start to the series. But excellent stuff all the same.